Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Connor. I'm the sheriff of Madison County, and with me today is State's Attorney Tom Hain and my investigative unit of Madison County Sheriff's Office. We also have the coroner of Madison County, and I have another special guest we'll introduce here in a minute. So back on November 9th, 1993, at approximately 11:45 p.m., the Madison County Sheriff's Office was summoned to a location off of Horseshoe Lake Road on Hanfelder Lane, where they found the nude body of a person, a female, that had been bludgeoned to death. And the next day that they identified this person as Randy Gale Black Sperino. Her maiden name was Black, and she was married, and her married name was Sperino. She was about 33 years old at the time, and she was the victim of a horrible homicide. The investigation identified her as a person that had been seen walking earlier that evening in an area of Granite City, which is commonly referred to as the West Granite part of Granite City. And she'd been identified by several people walking from downtown Granite across the overpass into West Granite, and the Madison County Sheriff's Office located a person who later was determined to be the last person to see her alive at around 8 p.m. on November 9th, 1993. And this individual saw her enter into what he described as a late 70s, early 80s dark-colored pickup truck. And that vehicle, she entered into it and was last seen traveling on Rock Road towards Route 3. And then around 11:45 p.m., her body was found as a victim of a homicide. So for the next 33 years, this case has been investigated, and it has surrounded around this truck. And many people have been interviewed, hundreds of people have been interviewed. And the amount of people that have been brought in and samples of DNA have been taken, because there was DNA left at the crime scene, and it was later identified as a male that left the DNA. And it was even entered into CODIS, which is the combined DNA system. And for those who don't know, the CODIS started nationally in 1998. And in the early 2000s, this DNA sample was entered into CODIS by the Illinois State Police. For the next 26 years, this DNA sample was tested just every day. It was tested and never received a hit through CODIS. So we looked at the case, we kept looking at the case. It was passed on from detective to detective, and even though you call it a cold case, it isn't a cold case. It is continually looked at. And if new evidence comes, new witnesses would come forward, we would look at it. About 8 years ago, I looked at the case and I started talking to the victim's son and guaranteed him that with the new technology, I really felt confident that we would eventually be able to solve this case. And we started talking about every 6 months he would call me, and eventually we just kind of forged a telephone friendship. And then I turned the case over to the detectives to start looking at the genealogy DNA aspect of this case. We looked at a couple labs nationally known, and we just weren't getting the right fit yet for this evidence. And one of our detectives then started a relationship with a lab called Othram out of Texas. And if you remember, here a while back, we had a Jane Doe that was identified from 1990, and it was through this lab, through the genealogy. So a year ago this month, the DNA evidence was submitted to Othram Lab, and they started their magic. And they continued to work this case. They were able to parse this DNA out, and it led to a lead on this case. That lead took them to the Midwest, and that information was given to our investigative team. Detective Jake Svoboda is the one who was actually assigned this case, and he started out with a name. And with that name, it led to more names, and eventually I can tell you that today we're here to announce that a subject by the name of Albert Lee Ziegler, Z-I-G-L-E-R, he's a white male with a date of birth of 09/16 of 1955, is solely responsible for the death of Randy Gale Black Sperino. He is currently in custody, and he's in custody of the Madison County Jail. So we're here to announce that, and at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hain to explain the charges since this actually took place in 1993.
Thank you, Sheriff. We're here to announce charges, first-degree murder charges against Albert L. Buddy Ziegler, age 70. He's charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The first count states, in that said defendant, without lawful justification and with the intent to kill Randy Gale Sperino, beat Randy Gale Sperino about the head with a bludgeon, thereby causing the death of Randy Gale Sperino. Count 2 is an alternative theory of the same charge. Detention petition in this case has been filed. That hearing, at least at initial appearance, is this afternoon at 1:30. My office intends to seek detention in this case due to the nature of the crime and the evident violence of the defendant. I'd like to make a few remarks in general about this case. The charges we filed today represent an important step towards justice in a case that remains solved for more than 3 decades. While nothing can erase the pain experienced by the victim's loved ones, we hope this development provides some answers after so many years. This case demonstrates the extraordinary value of modern investigative tools, such as forensic genealogical DNA. Advances in technology and science are creating opportunities to solve cases that years ago would simply be impossible to solve. But technology and science do not simply solve crimes alone, and they certainly do not bring convictions. These tools are only effective because of the extraordinary dedication, persistence, and professionalism of investigators and leaders like Sheriff Connor, who are willing to revisit evidence constantly, follow leads, knock on doors, conduct interviews, and most importantly, never give up on a case. Never give up on a case. I want to specifically commend Sheriff Connor. He would not want me to do that, but I'm going to do it anyway. 7 years ago, Sheriff Connor was the chief deputy of the Madison County Sheriff's Office. In a case in California involving a rapist and a killer known as the Golden State Killer had just made headlines. That case drew attention in part because it was solved with the use of a revolutionary investigative technique, which is forensic genealogical DNA. Sheriff Connor had the foresight to try to apply that revolutionary technology to this specific case. And it took years and years and years of effort, but now we believe it has provided the evidence sufficient to bring Gale's killer to justice, which is what we intend to do. They never wavered, they embraced new tools, and I would say it also reflects a culture of investing in law enforcement that Madison County has had for many, many years. And I would also like to commend Chairman Chris Sluster, who's here, who has continued that tradition of investing in law enforcement. We know that even though the case might not be solved immediately, the County Board of Madison County, the leaders of Madison County are here to invest in the tools necessary to make sure that the families and loved ones of those who are tragically killed or otherwise victimized have the resources sufficient to actually bring these individuals to justice. And that's a very, very, very important thing for our community to know. We are committed to never giving up on any case, to following every case to the very end. And I would also like to point out that this is now the second case in Madison County's history that has charged a defendant using this revolutionary technique, which is genealogical DNA technique, forensic genealogical DNA. Just weeks ago, Timothy Dubois was convicted of sexual assault and kidnapping due to this exact technique. That was the first case that we've obtained a conviction with that technique. And our trial team brought it to trial and convicted him at a jury trial. And now we intend to do the same thing here. And I want to commend all the law enforcement agencies who, this is a hard thing to spend time on. It's never the first thing you want to do, to bring this very, technical, difficult, and expensive technique on these cases, which, as Sheriff said, are cold cases, but they're not cold to the family. And our law enforcement community in Madison County is extraordinary because they invest in these kinds of tools and they invest in this kind of ongoing work to bring justice to our community. So to all of the law enforcement agencies in Madison County who continue to use these tools, and they're using them right now, seeking to solve other cases, we commend you, and we stand ready to prosecute those cases in the court of law. And I also want to commend Lauren Miracle and the Assistant State's Attorneys in the Violent Crimes Division, which she leads. Lauren's here with us today. She charged this case. We're getting good at prosecuting these cases, and we're going to continue to get better and better. And we see these tools as potentially revolutionary tools that will allow us to bring justice to cases that would otherwise have gone unsolved for years. So with that, I'd like to turn over to the Sheriff to introduce our special guests.
So there's a picture of Gail, and the next person I want to introduce is her son, Wes Sperino. He flew in from out of state, across the country to be here today. So Wes, you and your wife want to come up here, and he has a few words he'd like to say.
Hello, I'm Wes. That's my mom. It's been nearly 33 years since she was taken away from my family. And I never thought that this day would come. I thought I might pass and never know. But that all changed, thanks to these guys behind me and to my side. I want to thank all of Madison County law enforcement, ladies and gentlemen, that serve our communities every day all across the United States. But for me, especially these guys, I want to say thank you. I'll finally get closure with my family. I finally know who did this. And now I can be able to progress through life and open up a new door, a different chapter. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Last, I just want to thank everyone who worked on this case. We have a couple of the detectives here today that worked on this case from 1993 and was assigned the case into the 2000s. And this team behind me, they've just been fantastic throughout this whole investigation. And I couldn't be more proud of everyone. And thank you to the guys sitting up on the top level and to the ones behind us. So any questions?
We know it takes that human connection, obviously. I mean, you can have all the technology you want, but you got to have that person that recognizes it. And I'm wondering what it was like when that person brought it to you. Do you remember that moment when somebody said, "Holy cow, look what we found"? Oh,
yes. It was great. When Detective Svoboda and Captain Lawrence came in with the information, I go back to whenever Wes found out. To me, that was more important than anything, is whenever the son found out that they had somebody. But it is satisfying. It's very satisfying. Just you can't describe it. To be looking at this case from my perspective, but the son's perspective. I believe he said he was around 15 years old when this happened, and it's obvious it's been on his mind because Wes was so invested in this, calling like I said, about every 6 months to get that call. Very invested in this case of his mother.
Can you tell us a little bit about Mr. Ziegler, why he was here, what his connection was to the victim?
He is from this area, and there was no connection. He just picked her up walking down the street that night. No connection at all.
Where was your husband?
He was taken into custody at his home
In Madison County?
in, I believe it was actually in St. Clair County.
When was this?
Last part of last week.
Does he have a record?
Nothing that he went to prison for.
So he wasn't in CODIS?
He was not in CODIS.
Could you describe the way that baby Gail was found? Was she dumped on the side of the road?
She was removed from a truck and placed, drug onto the side of the road in a field, just off the side of the road.
And someone driving by saw?
The people who own that property, they actually left there around 9 p.m. and she wasn't there. When they came back around 11:30ish, they found her.
When you picked him up, what was his reaction? Was he surprised you found him?
Jake?
I'm Detective Jake Swoboda. I think the simplest answer to that question is yes. That we had some lengthy discussions with him, and I do believe that he had attempted to suppress some of these memories for quite some time, and that he was ultimately surprised that it ended the way it did. Thank you.
The previous case that the state's attorney brought up, Timothy Dubois, who was convicted of rape and was also not in CODIS, and had expressed some relief, you could say, in a way. He said that he was, glad to get it off his chest finally, that,
Sure.
that he was caught. Was there any element of that?
I was assisted in the interview with Detective Snyder, and we can say that towards the end of that interview, you could see that final acceptance of being able to move forward with something that weighed so heavily on him did eventually come to fruition for him.
So did one of Ziegler's relatives submit a swab at one point for like ancestry.com?
Through one of the consumer genealogical testing sites where you can, track ancestry and develop family tree type information. A family member of his had submitted that, yes.
What was the name of that lab you submitted it to?
Othram Labs in Texas.
Offering?
Othram with an O. Othram.
And I know you guys said it was costly, expensive to do those tests. How much does that cost?
Sure.
Chairman Slusser will be getting that bill soon. He'll let you know.
How often are you guys able to do those tests going forward, do you think, with other cases that date back pretty far?
Any case that we see where this could be an advantage to solving it, we'll utilize it. So it's hard to say. You have to have the evidence that is suitable for this type of case, this type of evidence. So it's hard to say. You just, it isn't every case. So it's very few and far between.
I have a question for the state's attorney. Can you tell us about these two counts? One obviously is related to intent, one is not. When this goes to trial, will this be a situation where one of those is kind of set aside, or could all charges stick?
They're both brought to trial, and there are alternative theories that will be presented to the jury. So they both are murder, first-degree murder. They both face the same sentence of 20 to 60 years in prison. Interestingly, because this case occurred, the murder occurred in 1993, it's subject to a different legal rule regarding how he spends that time in prison. Again, not prejudging the case. Again, this is all based on allegations, and every person is innocent until proven guilty. But if convicted, he would face 20 to 30 years in prison, but it would be at about a 50% sentence, day-for-day credit. Whereas today, if you commit a murder today under our truth in sentencing law, if you commit a murder and you're sentenced to 60 years, you spend 60 years in prison. So that is an interesting wrinkle in this case.
In the Dubois rape case,
Yes.
the lab provided names of hundreds of people who were
Yeah.
related to the offender. And police used, say, the top several names and did, search Facebook.
Yes.
And that's how they found the rapist through Facebook. A relative posted a photo that looked like can you guys tell me how it worked in this particular case?
The relative posted a photo of Mr. Dubois, and then he was recognized as around the same age and approximately of the same likeness of the sketch that the victim had done. In this case, I would defer until the trial for a close examination of exactly how this happened. I would just say this, because we're here to present charges. The defendant will have his day in court. We will be responsible for proving him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. We don't want to in any way try him in the press here. He's innocent until proven guilty. But these cases are, the forensic genealogical DNA is an investigative tool. It's still very hard to do. You have to have an excellent police agency. You have to have excellent detectives, excellent investigators, because once you run that initial stage of a forensic genealogical DNA, it's still a very low likelihood that you could find an individual who's close enough to start to pull together these strands. And it still takes an enormous amount of work, enormous number of interviews. And so I would just say in this case, it took a lot of traditional police work combined with cutting-edge tools to get this to the stage where we could charge this individual. And we're very thankful for our local law enforcement, for the sheriff's office, and the incredible work they've done in this case, and in many others, to give us the tools to convict individuals who are victimizing members in our community.
What was the time frame from the genetic genealogy hit to the identification of this individual?
Again, I would defer a close analysis of the evidence until trial, when it will all be presented, and that's a public hearing, or after trial, when we can discuss it at length, because it will be after the evidence has been heard by the fact finder.
Sheriff, what was the weapon that was used to kill Randy?
At this time, we're only releasing that it was a bludgeon. And we're not going to actually talk about the exact type of weapon, but she was bludgeoned to death. But one thing I will add is I mentioned at the very beginning, the last person that saw her alive saw her getting into a late 70s, early 80s dark-colored truck. And I can tell you that our investigators were able to confirm that he had a vehicle registered that meets that description, fits that description at the time of the murder. So I want to thank everybody for coming today. It's a pretty good day here in the sheriff's office, and I know it's a really good day in Wes's home. So we just appreciate you coming here, and just thank everybody for their time. So.
Can we get spelling on his first and last name?
W-E-S-L-E-Y, Sperino, S-P-E-R-I-N-O.
Where are you from?
I was born here, but I've been in California since 1989.
And a correction in the charging documents, it has Randy with an I, but it's actually with a Y. That will be updated. So thank you all very much. Really appreciate your time.